Brian, Angus, guys, good to see you guys. My gosh. This is strange circumstances, but it would have been even stranger if we weren't doing this at all. And for one point, I thought maybe that may never happen again. So the fact we're even getting a chance to sit down and talk about new ACDC is such a joy, gentlemen, such a joy.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming through and delivering once again on an amazing record. Last time we saw the two of you hanging out with your friends, it was rock or bust. And I guess you guys chose rock in the end, and not bust.
Well said.
Yeah, that's right.
I want to talk a little about what life is like when you're not actively in ACDC, i.e. touring or making records. I mean, I see Angus behind you. You got a couple of Marshall stacks there.
Yeah.
But do you sort of try to keep remnants or reminders of the band at bay at home, or do you lean into the legacy of the band even in your own lifestyle?
I'm lucky in the sense when I'm not doing anything, I've got a good kind of switch. I can kind of switch off to what I'm doing. So even if I've been on even touring, after a couple of weeks I get a little bit antsy. I get a little bit, I've got to do something now. So then I just, go in my little studio and start doing a little bit of work.
When it's time to pick the guitar up and lean into something, are you thinking about AC/DC, or are you just playing for the love of playing and it naturally just comes out?
Yeah, if I just pick up a guitar at home, I might doodle for a little bit, a few minutes, just do a few, warm up my hands and fingers and try something off the wall. Other times I might just sit and experiment a little bit, try something different, pick up another instrument and start, banging a drum or picking up a bass. Yeah. And then I usually get, bored after a while doing that, and I go, okay, I'll start now concentrating on putting together a few song ideas. Once I start getting one idea together, that kicks me off to the next one, because I go, okay, I've got to get better. And build off that.
I wondered how many riffs and how many ideas you sort of kick around before you land that one that is up to the standard of the band, that's going to hold it down with all the other great riffs and great songs that you've worked on with the band and with your brother in the past.
I get very excited with doing something new and going, well, it's AC/DC, but it's got a little bit of a different angle on it. So that's always, for me, the big puzzle, finding something that's AC/DC, but it's something you've not heard AC/DC done before. So you try to look for new ways of doing riffs, and you experiment a little bit with those. But then when you get something, you go, oh, that's definitely AC/DC, and you know that you've cracked a puzzle there, and that gives you a little bit of excitement and a little bit of a rush. And then I go, okay, you've done that now, on to the next thing. And then find another song idea that you can go, right, I've got to now, get better than what I did with the one before. So it's a constant puzzle.
When you have perfection at the beginning, and Brian, you must understand this more than anybody. When you invent rock and roll perfection, which is what is widely considered to be AC/DC's equation, which is like put these things into a chemistry, and it is what rock and roll should sound like. Boom.
Yeah.
Done from day one. I don't know. I just don't know how you approach that from a reinvention point of view, because it's like the perfect meal from the day you cooked it.
Yeah, well, that's a good way of putting it, my son. But, the thing is, I always look at myself as being really lucky. When we go into the studio, Angus and, of course, and Malcolm in the old days, used to bring in these tunes that for a vocalist or singer were just meat and potatoes. I mean, if you didn't do it right, it didn't sound right at all, So the thing is, as I've said before, when I go in there, first of all, I'm very excited because I'm the first person in the world who's going to sing this song.
And you're the biggest AC/DC fan in the world at that time, right? So you get to go in there and be that guy.
I'm the astronaut sitting on the first rocket to the moon, in my mind. The thing I have to do to myself, think, is that I've got to try to get it exactly the way that Angus has heard it in his brain. Can I tell you, I got a little letter today from a little kid, Angus, I got to tell you, in Argentina. He's called Ivan. was 15 and he sent a letter and it just said he'd just seen the thing. He was very excited and all that. And he ended the letter and he said, for me, ACDC are the most powerful and strong band in the world. And I just sat and I looked and I said, you know what, we must be doing something right for this kid to figure that out. And I think that's what Ang and Mal brought to the table of rock and roll in the world, was this power and strength, but also this swing. If it doesn't swing, it doesn't mean a thing.
Oh, there's so much groove.
Yeah.
There's so much analysis that has gone into AC/DC just through the fact that on the surface it seems like such a simple concoction, the idea of a finite amount of players playing something really in unison with each other. Everybody is in lockstep in unison. But that in itself is such a masterful approach because it's all about unity. A lot of times when people make music, it's about counterpoints and about the way that things fit or don't fit. With AC/DC, it's like it was just born to move as one, like one human being moving and everyone plays a different limb. Do you know what I mean? And there's something magical about what you've created.
Even when you're doing that creation, that's the thing that you go for most is, and I learned this from Malcolm, my brother, also the big guy, and we were very lucky when we were younger, as my older brother George, who produced a lot of our early albums. He always said to take something complex like music, it's a bit like a building. You've got to have those simple, basic elements. Then you can build off that. He said the real art is making the complex simple. So that's
I love that.
that's how we always approached it. He said with a lot of music, there's a thing of trying making it too complex, where they overproduce, they throw everything in but the kitchen sink to a song. And he used to say, with a band like us, there's just the two guitars, the bass and the drums, and the vocal on top. He said, you've got to keep it pretty tight and basic to get that song idea across, which is true. If you're reading a book, your imagination takes over when you're reading a good book. You envision that book in your mind's eye. And it's the same way, I think, with a lot of music. You can play a chord or two, and it's knowing when not to overdo it and let the audience, they kind of fill in the spaces.
Oh, there's so much for the audience to connect to. I mean, even if you've ever seen an AC/DC show and you realize that so much of the tempo revolves in between that kind of 108 or 110 to 120, 125, which is just that perfect tempo to move to. So that's why everyone just, without even realizing it, everyone's just doing this thing. And it's like, it's so laid out for us in the most beautiful way to just connect and to have our experience with it.
Brian will tell you, and when you're playing live also, the audience is it's five of us, but they're the sixth member. And we always go on. We don't say to an audience, come on, you're with us. We get out and we just play and we let them come into it.
Well, I would say yes, with the exception of, depending on how long your intro is, which, depending on what tour you did, can anywhere be between 10 minutes and 5 minutes, just for the intro.
Right.
And then I would say that, you invite everybody in, but you grab us and drag us into the field without any doubt.
Yes.
I mean, those intros are unbelievable. You must laugh sometimes when you see some of the ideas presented to you, because it's just like it's like a Michael Bay film or something. Some of them are just unbelievable.
Brian will tell you this also. Sometimes with an audience, they're so excited before you come on. And I used to say, now we're going to go on and spoil it. Because they're already having a party. They're having a party. And they're loving it. Yeah. And I mean, and sometimes when you would get on and we would start up, and you got a big sound system, it's pumping out what the band does, but sometimes you couldn't hear them for the roar.
That's what happens when you write classic after classic after classic. It's been an incredible ride, and let's just not take this moment for granted.
Yeah.
Because I would say there are very few bands that can see off danger and tragedy and challenges the way that ACDC can, and yet with the tragic passing of Malcolm, with what Phil was going through, Brian, what you went through, and ultimately what Cliff decided to do, I have to be honest, I thought, I don't even think ACDC can survive this. I genuinely felt that. And I really tip my cap to you for seeing the tour through. And maybe we could talk a bit about Axl later, because he deserves a little moment, because he really stepped up. And I watched footage of that. I didn't have tickets to any of those remaining shows, but I saw footage. He really stepped up and poured his heart and soul into it. But I just didn't think that you would come back from this. And so my question, Angus, is did you?
Not really, no. Because for me, it was the big question mark. Malcolm, my brother, was always really practical. That's always how I knew him. I remember even from when we were younger, he would say to me, "You got any good ideas or something for stage or something?" And I would say, "Oh, well, what about we maybe try this?" And he would go, "Right." And any idea, he would make it practical. That was always, for me, his gift, I mean, even first starting out, I think we had to go do a few gigs outside where we were living, and we needed transport. Malcolm would go, "Come on, me and you." We go down a used car place. We get a car. It was an old bomb. It was lucky it was even roadworthy, It was like buying something from Fair Deal Dan, And we got this old little truck just so we could do those gigs. So that was how his mind worked.
He was the doer. He was the one who made it
he made it
possible.
Practical. Yeah. And even if I had some little riff I had going, he would break it down and we can make this into a good rock intro. So he was the one that could sync a song through, and break it down to the parts, where he always said, that's what we got to do. Keep it tight, keep it simple. There was nothing worse than, when people are tapping their foot, you want them to keep tapping. You don't want to...
Yeah, that's called groove.
That's right. So that was his whole thing. Yeah. When we had Bon Scott, our original singer, and he passed very tragically. It was Malcolm, after a couple of weeks, called me up and said, there's no point in this, the two of us just moping all the time. Let's just we'll get a little studio, and the two of us will go there, and we'll just do what we were doing before, just writing songs, and don't think of anything. And then hopefully you can deal with the crisis of it, get through it. And that was good kind of therapy for us, because it took our minds away and we can concentrate on what we were doing.
Well, it sounds like he had the ability to be able to make you understand that when something seemed too vast, whether it was a riff or a journey to a gig, that you had to take one step in front of the other in order to get to the end of that particular thing. And when that advice and that friendship and that relationship as a brother and as a mentor and as someone who's really close to you is no longer there, how do you respond to that? Because that has been Malcolm's role, as you said, for decades,
I talk to him here in my head. I have to go through him, and then I've got my other brother, and I have this conversation going on with the three of them, and then I rely on what they taught me, and also from my old brother George. He had taught in his early, he'd got us very young, took us in studios, let us even, when I was in my teens, play on records with him doing the guidance, so that you understood how a record was made. And he did the same with Malcolm. He used Malcolm a lot on doing sessions. It gave us, a good insight, especially on the studio side at a young age. So all of that experience, that helped us. I always felt really lucky, and Malcolm was always generous. Anything he did, like when we were younger, I just had an acoustic guitar from my early age, Malcolm had an electric guitar, which he got off my brother, and he was using that. Then he gave me that guitar, and then later on he came in to me and said, and I didn't ask or anything, he said, "I've got you an amp." He'd gone out and got me an amp, he was always good at that side. He had a big heart towards me. And even later on, because he used to always say, or he'd come visit me and he'd go, Angus, you need some microphones. And he'd come back the next time with a bag of microphones. Or he would go, I'll get you some better speakers. He would come back. He was always doing stuff like that.
He sounds like an amazing brother, first and foremost, before anything else.
Yeah, we had our differences at times, and we were two brothers. We could beat the crap out of each other at times too. But I couldn't fault him in his generosity, and his time also, because he was always so very quick with ideas, anything in a studio, playing songs. I mean, Malcolm knew songs I didn't know existed, When we were kids, we were once playing at a wedding, and, somebody said, can you play Zorba the Greek? And Malcolm, yeah, sure. No, I'm going. What?
No.
Malcolm.
No.
Malcolm starts it up. He got us through. I'm just following him. I'm like a bar behind going, what's he doing? Yeah.
You've dedicated this album to him.
Yes.
And rightfully so. And so his spirit clearly still permeates through this. Now, you were very clear that there was no playing to some degree that directly related to him because, and I love the way that you said this, you were worried about manipulating his parts because I guess to some degree he did also a very good job of establishing his own taste profile, his own design of what he would have wanted. And you wanted to respect that. Is that right?
Yeah, I didn't want to pick pieces together, and I know the technology's there, but I didn't want to do that. He would not have liked that.
Yeah.
Even when we were doing a track of somebody said, and Malcolm thought, oh, no, we could do better. He didn't let it go until he thought all the parts were there, even if it meant redoing, the whole guitar work on a track or anything.
Whatever it took.
Whatever it took. And he was always proud of his own performance. And I'd go, what are you playing there, Malcolm? And he'd go, I'd simply, blah, blah, blah. And I go, what I'm doing is just not the same as what you're doing. And he's going, no, you've got it. You've got it. You're playing, But I would always be in, let me get that right. And he would always be very patient and go, well, it's this. No matter how long it took for it to go in my head, And I used to say, I always feel a little bit one or two steps behind him. And Malcolm would go, no, Angus, he goes, when you got it, he said, it might take you those 2 steps, but when it's in, it ain't leaving your brain. So he was always good like that.
Amazing, absolutely incredible. And as you said, the engine, I mean, for the longest time when he played, just so rock solid. So you're in a situation where, and you said this beautifully before, where you still make decisions based on what you've learned from your brothers and from this amazing tutelage that you got. But you didn't have a singer for a while. Not just a singer, the singer. The singer that the only other person who can even dance in that range with that power is Axel, and the only one who can even get close to Brian is willing to step in and have a crack to help you finish. So
yes,
there's no one who can replace Brian. That must have been a real moment for you, Brian, as well, to be in a situation where this thing, as you say, being the world's biggest ACDC fan, that there was a time when this album, Power Up, wasn't an option.
Oh, yes. Things happen, and when this thing happened to me, it was sudden. It was building up, I knew it was getting worse and worse. And then it suddenly came to the point where it had to stop. And when I was told to stop. And it's horrible and it's cruel and and you're suddenly by yourself. You're by yourself, your family, your family's gone. But at the same time, I had to be realistic about it. I said, listen, this isn't anything terminal. I've still got my health, and I've been very lucky to have got this far in life. I think I was 68 years old at the time, which is quite an age. And I looked around the world, and a lot of people, even friends of mine, had passed. And that very week that it happened to me, my best friend passed away with cancer at the age of 59.
Sorry.
And that was like a double blow. And it was all pretty rotten. And I just thought I'd man up and just have to go through. It was painful and horrible, but it's, as I've said before, I just buried my head in a bottle of whiskey for a couple of months, and I did, and it was painless. And I didn't take drugs, or go and see a psychiatrist, or, do all that rock and roll, what you're supposed to do,
No, you did Scottish therapy.
Yeah, I did. It was good. You just manned up. And then, through all of that, and I'm just like you and Angus, and did you think anything was going to happen? Well, of course I didn't. I thought that was it. And then really, it was only about 18 months after that, and I was just kind of still missing and wondering what to do next, if anything, because I'm like, Angus, I got to do something, I'm just an itchy kind of guy. And I got the call from Angus in the office, management and things, and asking if I would like to do an album. And of course, I thought, surely this couldn't be another great chance in life to do what you love doing. And it certainly was. And that's why I'm so appreciative of the lads and everybody to just give you a chance to get in there and, sure you can try your stuff out in the studio.
But Brian, in your mind, because I know that when you go through significant hearing damage, and I have a bit of mild hearing damage from loud music throughout the years and such, so I know that when it gets to that point, you have to really try to take care of it. But there are other ways that you can work around it, and I know that you were going through treatment. In your mind, though, Brian, when you left that tour, when you had to walk away, did it feel like you might not get a call like that? Because singing on an album is very different to doing 200 shows around the world. Were you concerned about that?
Yes, but technology is a wonderful thing, Zen. And I got to tell you, it was just lucky. When this wonderful gentleman, he came up and was looking for me, and he was an audio professor, and he wanted to try this new technology. And he said, listen, we could do it together if I can come down and visit you. And I didn't know. I thought it might have been all smoke and mirrors, somebody trying it on. But he was the actual genuine article, and he did fly down all the way from Denver, Colorado, and we sat there for 2 days, and I just couldn't believe the results. But unfortunately, it was the size of a car battery.
Right.
And so we spent the next 2 years basically miniaturizing, which is the hard thing. But anyway, It worked well. And when we'd done the album and we shot a video in Amsterdam, Angus said, do you want to do a rehearsal? Because I didn't want to go through what I went through again. And so I said, yeah. And Angus put the whole back line up. And they were saying, well, we can start quietly. And we said, no, I want full battlefield conditions. And little Stephen came with us, and we put it in the ears. And we were expected at least, maybe 2 days of screwing around. But boy, oh boy, it worked straight away.
Oh, I can't even imagine. That would have been an incredible feeling, an incredible experience. It's funny, isn't it? So many people go through life and they get told for injury or for lots of different reasons, you can no longer play your chosen sport. You can no longer do the thing that you spent your childhood dreaming of doing. But it's very rare you get a chance to come back and you get a chance to do it again.
I don't have the words. I really don't have the words to tell you how I felt. But happy was one of them. It was really good.
I bet. But also, not just you. I mean, you talk about second chances, but Angus, it can't be lost on you the importance, especially when you hear this new album, just how incredible it is to hear Brian singing at full capacity again, and to know that was able to happen thanks to technology and friendship.
Yeah, it was an easy thing, because we'd worked with Brian all those years from when, Bond. That's a long time, It's over 40-something years. So I know with my brother, with Malcolm, because all of these songs that are on Power Up, the album, these are all ideas that me and him had worked on. Malcolm knew that. That's how he knew the band. I would have to do that anyhow. I would need to contact Brian first. I knew Brian we'd been kept updated, that he'd been getting good results with that, working with that technology. And so everything seemed to come together. Everyone, and Cliff wanted to be on board, because Cliff had always said, even at the end of the tour, I had said to him, if I do anything, do you want me to contact you? And he said, yeah, no, definitely contact it,
So what did you take from that? Again, this Rock or Bust tour must have been beyond challenging because all these things are happening at the same time. And then to the credit of yourself and to the band, you saw this tour through. Most wouldn't have. You saw it through. Prior to the end of it, when Cliff said, this is going to be it for me, it's almost a mixed message for him to turn around and say, but give me a call at the end of it. Because you would think that for him to go through that heartache for him, to make a disconnection, that he would need to make a clean break and go, the rest of my life is now dedicated to something else. What did you take from that when he sort of said to you, no, give me a call.
But I knew Cliff at the beginning, from the very beginning, even when we started to get ready to go on tour. Cliff had said this would be his last tour. We knew that. When all of this come up and Brian was in, really bad shape, he couldn't do his role, me and Cliff had to sit and go, okay, we got to deal with the options, what we're going to do. To do these dates anyhow, we had to inform people we wouldn't be able to do them. And you have to tell people the truth. We had a whole group with over 60-something, 70 people working there with us, all waiting on an answer. So.
Oh, and it's way more complicated than that. What people don't realize is that there's a significant amount of insurance issues and legalities. It's intense.
We could have just stopped and said, we'll cancel and hopefully we'll get another chance. But we knew there would still be even a lot of insurance and legality there. Or we can look at other options. Maybe, and somebody said, well, maybe we could get somebody who might guest. We might have some people who you could try out who might be able to do the role, get you through. So we had to look at those options. And then out of the blue, we got a message, that Axl Rose would help, If nothing interfered with his commitments, he would gladly help us out. So we got a rehearse place and tried out. And, he put a lot of effort and everything.
Oh, he was on his best behavior, I think, wasn't he? I mean, if you've ever been to a Guns N' Roses show, the fact that he showed up on time means he must have a huge amount of respect for ACDC because he's not known for being the most punctual on his own time. I'll say that.
Yeah, well, I'd only met him a long time ago in the 80s. He had come to a show and he was... To me, he was very, very nice and everything. Basically, that's how it came into be. That allowed us to finish off those dates. So, for us, it was a heaven sent. It was like a little bit like a lifesaver. And even though he had done his foot in, before he started, he borrowed a chair. He was determined he was going to go. So I thought, the first show we had to do, I think, was in Portugal. And, it was a horrible day. It was raining and everything. It was open air. It was...
Anything that can go wrong, yeah.
Everything was going wrong. And then just at the last minute, the sky cleared. The storm went away. We got on stage and got through. He performed from a chair, give it his best shot, and we got through. So that, for the band, we'll be forever grateful. And he, helped us get through all of those shows.
It must have been a really strange situation for you, Angus, to be on stage and having, like we said, been through a lot, but you're looking to your left, and there's Stevie, and you're like, okay, I kind of get that, and the spirit of Malcolm is alive and moving through the DNA and the lineage. I love that. But over here, Cliff, he's out, and where's Phil? And then there's Axl. And there must have been just moments when you thought, wow, how are we even going to get through this time? I know you're determined, and I know the band is incredible, but crazy.
I don't know, maybe it's because you go, well, it just needs that big bell to fall on top of your head or something, And...
Is that how it ends?
One of those cannons go off and takes you with it, So if anything was going to go wrong, and you can go, well, hey, they tried. If you try, people respect that you tried. I've seen it with Brian. I saw it with Bon Scott also. The best performances they ever did is when their throat was shot, when they could hardly talk.
Well, you go somewhere deeper as well. You go somewhere deeper and it becomes about your spirit, not about your talent. And it becomes about what you mean versus what you want.
That's right. And that's the audiences, they appreciate you more that you've gone and you've tried. I think, people appreciate it and they go, I know the guy's not in full 100%, but he's really up there giving the best he can do. Yeah.
It's sad at the moment because we're missing live music in the biggest way, and ACDC have consistently been one of the most in-demand hard tickets on the planet. This album is so built, as all ACDC records are, to be played live. I mean, Code Red itself would be worth the price of admission, which is one of my favorites, by the way. But I think looking at the way the band is built now, with Cliff, part of the reason he didn't want to stay in the band was he didn't want to tour. And Brian obviously needed to take care of his health with his hearing, which live music can be a hazard for. Granted, you can't even cross that bridge right now, but as and when things get back to normal, what's the general feeling about the band about playing live and touring? In particular, Brian.
Well, when we finished the rehearsal, we were all pretty high on how it had all gone. We just talked about doing a few shows, and let's say, taking baby steps like Angus said, or like Malcolm would always say, just take a step at a time and let's see how it works and all that. And then 3 days later...
3 shows for you is still 300,000 people. It's like, we'll just do like 3-4 shows, yeah? We'll do 3-4 shows.
Well, I don't know. We're talking big ones or small ones,
Obviously.
just a few.
No, the big ones.
No, I think we're talking about doing some smaller ones, just for a bit of fun. But even that, we couldn't even plan to make plans 3 days later. We all went home, and this virus, by the time we got home, it had just travelled so quickly, and it affected everybody, and it just...
Yeah.
And now look at us, it's 6 months later, 7 months later.
Longer. Time is... I'm losing track.
We would love nothing more than to just... God, I'd love to hear the boys power up on live, just that first few things, and just get on and go... Let me hear them.
It begs the question that this album, I know that you had kind of recorded before, as you say. You were ready to kind of roll it out. I know, because I got a chance to hear some stuff before we all went into quarantine, and I was like, let's go. So I know you've been patiently waiting to get this record out. Now, given that it can take upwards of 6 years for an AC/DC record, and every one of them is well worth the wait, I suppose the question is, why put it out now, and why not see what 2021 was going to look like and feel like? What prompted the decision to put Power Up out now?
Well, we depended mainly on, our record company, which was, they were the ones given the advice, and they said, we can do it now. Because originally, we had geared up for it, as Brian said. It was going to come out early. We had done all promo, video stuff for it. And as he said, we were even planning maybe if we do some shows, if it worked. We were geared up to go earlier, but, the virus thing, kicked in big time. And so it was a case of leaving it up to them when they thought they had the clearance and putting, into, the production, getting CDs and whatnot, if they had all the tools to do that. And they said we should be able to do at this point. We were depending on them. If they and that's what I said. Well, if you believe you can do it, we'll do our best to help you promote it.
Yeah, the record is such a welcome thing. But you're right, it's strange to not then have a cross on a calendar with AC/DC.
That's right.
Live at the Forum or live at the Rose Bowl next to it. For me in LA, it's just a strange thing.
You'll get a few hours anyhow of euphoria if you hear it. Yeah.
I think they waited till the world hit a misery level, a limit of misery with this thing, and just said, right, time to cheer it up.
And you've done that. Something positive and something powerful, and it is a brilliantly classic sounding AC/DC record, but with new things to it. Angus, I wondered from your perspective, what were some of the new things? We talked at the beginning of the conversation, the desire for subtle reinvention in order to make sure each AC/DC record is a refresh, and we've seen that over and over again. What was new about this time for you?
Well, a lot of them is the songs themselves. Even when Malcolm, we put these ideas. They're not like B songs or anything. These are songs that we had marked out as AC/DC songs. These ideas came from when we would just before we did the album Black Eyes. We had quite a big break, and me and him had been in the studio for a long time, for a lot of years, just writing songs. So a lot of these were song ideas. Even when we went to do Black Eyes, we had so much material It was a case of when Brendan O'Brien, who produced it and produced this album also, we were going to the beginning. He'd start from here, disc one, and he's going through and he's liking all from all the early stuff. And we got whole boxes of a whole heap of other songs.
How many? I mean, but how many are we talking about here? I mean, if you and Malcolm are just in the studio during downtime, because I think if my timeline is correct, rewinding back about 40, 50 minutes into the conversation, you said it takes you 2 weeks off the road and then you pick up the guitar and you start writing again. So that leaves a huge amount of time to write. So how many ideas and songs are we talking about here, Angus?
Yeah. Well, I start writing and then I didn't know, what was going to happen. And I thought, now's the time to go through all what we had done.
But are we talking hundreds? Are we talking dozens? Are we talking thousands? Like how many songs?
I would say, there's hundreds of them.
Wow.
I mean, not just even from that time, even from before. I've got whole songs Malcolm just wrote in my head that I can go in, I pick up the guitar and I can put them together and they're songs. They're that strong, a lot of what he does.
Wow.
I always loved doing his ideas and he liked doing mine, and I would always go, no, we do yours. Yours are always so solid. I would go, okay, Mal, I know you like that idea of mine. Now tell me what you like about it, so I've got the idea. Yeah.
But I love this idea that, of the two of you, the way it's been described, just the chemistry between you and Malcolm for now, not including George or the rest of the band.
Yeah.
That you would look to your brother with such a sense of assurance and, as you said, practicality. And yet it was you that got put out in front along with Brian to just charge into battle. And yet it strikes me like you were the one that's like, is this song good enough, Malcolm? And yet you're the one that's out front. And it's such an interesting balance, isn't it, between insecurity and confidence?
No matter who we work with, like even produce, the one I always went to, even when I worked with my older brother, George, and whenever I was there and doing guitar solos or any guitar pieces, my brother would go, yeah, it's happening, sounds great. But the one I always relied on was Malcolm. If Malcolm went, yeah, that made it for me. Even like when we worked with Mutt Lang also, it was the same. Mutt would go, hey, this is, that's good, that's happening. But I would go, Mal, if Mal said yay, I knew it was good. Or if Mal even he would go to Mutt and go, no, Angus can do better.
Can Brandon fill in that role to some degree now as a producer because he's worked with you on 3 of your most sort of powerful sounding modern records? Does he have that same ability to get past your own sense of concern? Yeah,
I'll tell him, because I'll tell him in Malcolm's words. I'll say, because I'll be there saying, I need the extra ear. I have to,
Yeah.
I have to look and I would think, okay, would Mal get this, what I'm doing here now? And then there'd be Brendan, and he would try and, do that role and say, well, we'll try this or we'll try that. So I'm using a bit of that, but then I also have to put on my brother's head and go, would he want that there? Would he want this here? And Malcolm had a lot of great things, even with vocal ideas, and he knew, whenever I would do a vocal, I tend to go rhythmic, very rhythmic. I'm not really, if I do a chorus idea, I kind of do it in my own rough style. I kind of just go for the meter of that. Malcolm, he would always say, no, we got to get the spread. And he would work on it and make it really clear. Because otherwise, when I get to it, it was like a highway to hell or something like that. It'd be like, highway to hell. But Malcolm would go, no, we've got to stretch it out a little bit here, Hank. He would put the polish on it.
This album is just, I have to say, and as we've talked about Power Up and you've shared some of the process that you've been using in order to achieve this, it makes me realize even more after I heard it for the first time what an incredible milestone this is. And you're not short on them. You know, you've been through some real ups and some real lows, only to get back up again. And this has been a life's journey. And this album, in many respects, must feel like a very important one, because what a shame if Rock or Bust had been the last AC/DC record, and it had been health, and it had been addiction, and it had been all these other things that had beaten AC/DC, and you had lost the ability to call time yourself. That would have been a tragedy.
That's right. And then that's the other thing too, you know. You can't call an album rock or bust and then go bust, you know.
No, that's what I said at the start. That's what I said. I was like,
that was the biggest thing. I go, wait a minute, I called this. I was the one that said called that rock or bust. And I would have to live with that and go, hey, bust, you know.
Well, listen, long may AC/DC reign. No one has done it better. No one has brought groove and music and power into rock and roll, and the reason why we still love your music and why you still are so adored is because every ingredient is perfect.
Thank you, man.
Thank you.
I appreciate
Thank you.
that. Thank you so much.
Yes.